Okay. Hey, everybody. I invited Tag from Life Done Free over to have a discussion with me. We're going to do a series of videos on the 28 principles of freedom as found in the book, The 5,000 Year Leap. And we'll discuss all that here in a little bit. But first, I want to say hello to Tag, and I want to thank him for coming over. I think he's going to have some really good insights that you guys will find really useful.
Yeah, well, Garen, thanks for having me. And I love talking about freedom. And so yeah, I'm super excited to be here. And this is something that G has been talking to me about for months. And
Yeah.
so I'm glad we finally got to meet up and finally got a chance to to have a conversation about it.
Tag's been riding me to get it going, and I've been remiss, so I apologize.
Well, it's not like you have anything else to do, Garen.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Nothing else.
But so
you're like B, you're always on vacation.
Oh yeah, B's the slacker. I'm gonna get in so much trouble whenever I see her next time she sees this. So this video series, we honestly don't know how long it's going to take. This is the very first episode of the series, and it could take 28 weeks. We might power through 3 or 4 principles in one episode. We don't know. This is brand new to us. One thing is for certain is you'll be able to find this video on both Grumpy Acres Farm and Life Done Free. And you can watch it wherever you want to watch it. Okay. We just, the most important thing is that you watch it. All right. We don't care where. All right. So the source of the principles list is a book entitled The 5,000 Year Leap. And in a nutshell, the premise of the book is that once the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were ratified, that the relationship between the citizen and the government took a dramatic change, and the previous 5,000 years were completely nullified by this new change, and it enabled all the advancements that happened through the 19th and 20th century, and I tend to agree with it. I think that the founding of our country was a very important milestone in human history. So, and I read these principles and I thought, okay, I got to discuss this. I got to talk to people about this. I got to share this, and I could not think of a better person than Tag to start this journey with and talk about it. Before we get into the principles, though, I think it's important to talk about the way the lens through which we view these things. So I'm a very firm believer that we need to view the writings of our founding fathers and the Bible and all these other really important historical documents through the eyes of their target audience. So the target audience of the Bible initially was the first century Christians. So we need to view the Bible through that lens. The target audience of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were late 18th century Americans, and society was completely different, and they held a completely different worldview. And I know this is gonna spark some discussion, or not discussion, but some debate amongst people. There's a narrative out there that the founding fathers did not hold a Judeo-Christian worldview. They held a deist worldview. And I've got a real problem with that, because if you look at it historically, out of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, only 2 of them were identified as deists, and that was Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin. All the rest of them were some denomination of Christianity. So as a result, they held a Judeo-Christian worldview, and their writings and their beliefs were colored by that. And I think that's really important. And the other important fact of that is just because they've got a Judeo-Christian worldview does not mean that these ideas don't apply to everybody. And the whole point behind the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution was that they applied to everybody. every single person, no matter your race, color, or creed. And, you know, and I know somebody out there is going to make a comment, well, what about slavery? Well, that's the genius. The slavery is a prime example of the genius of the founding fathers, in my opinion, because they wrote into the Constitution, they knew it was a problem, and they wrote into the Constitution a way to fix it, where other documents wouldn't do that.
Article
So
5.
do what?
I said Article 5.
Article 5, exactly. So as we're talking about this, I want to make sure that we're looking through this through the lens of the target audience and what the founding fathers believed in, not what we believe in. All right. So, and by all means, if you disagree, make a comment below. Comment on it. We'll talk about it. Tag made a great point before we even started that there's going to be debate through this, and that's what this is all about. Because if we can't debate our ideas and defend them, then they're not worth defending. All right. If you have to resort to name calling or shutting somebody down in the process of defending your ideas, then maybe your ideas are wrong. You got anything to add to that, Tag? I'm sorry, I got a little long-winded.
No, you're all right. I mean, we might as well kick this thing off in a roar. You know, I think I would agree with you that the Constitution was written. You have to keep it, you know, when you're talking about the audience at that, you know, 17th century or the late 17th century, Christian American mainly. But I would argue that the Declaration of Independence was written for the late 17th century British soldier, officer, king, because what they were saying is they were saying, hey, we're done with you, right? Here's our grievances, you know, from cutting off our trade with the parts of the world to, you know, all of these different grievances that they outlined in the Declaration of Independence. So I would counter that the argument they were making was to the British, not to the American people, from the Declaration of Independence perspective, not the constitutional perspective.
Oh, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people, and it's a fault of the education system here. They were not Americans. They were British citizens. They were, when the Declaration of Independence was written, they were all British citizens. That's why that 1619 project saying that America was racist from its get-go. Okay, even if you accept part of that premise, they weren't Americans, they were British. So Britain was the racist one, if you hold that argument to the facts. All right. And I don't agree with it. The 1619 project is a joke in my mind. It's just a way to tear down the country. But the point is, I think, Tag, you're 100% correct, man. It's geared towards the British citizen at that point. Well,
yeah, and then I think the other thing I want to mention, what you talk about, is, you know, through the eyes of a Christian. And I think a good Christian, you know, regardless of whether you're talking about the 17th century, 18th, 19th, 20th, you know, where we are today, I think a good Christian is tolerant. And I think that they wrote the Declaration of Independence, and they wrote the Constitution, and they wrote the Bill of Rights, and they did those things not for Christians. And in fact, I would argue that you know, they viewed it in a much bigger scope, and they said for all human beings. That these are our rights given to us by God, whatever your God is. And, you know, they mention all the way through the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, God. But I don't recall a single place in there where they mention Christianity.
Right. You're 100% correct. You know, and I think something that people need to realize when we're going through this, that the founding fathers, the time the Declaration of Independence was written in the Constitution, were coming out of the Great Awakening, which was an evangelical movement among the Protestants that started in about 1730s and ran. You know what? Its repercussions are felt today. I mean, I honestly believe that if you look at what they talked about during the Great Awakening, the religious repercussions in America are relevant today. So, you know, and you're right. They did not mention Christianity, but they did have a Judeo-Christian worldview. And I think that's the genius of it all is they're talking universal truths versus the truth of whatever their religion is. Because if I remember correctly, go on.
Yeah, and I would argue that a step further. I would say that because they're coming from that Christian background, that they specifically left the word Christianity out of there. That wasn't a mistake. They specifically said that, hey, listen, even though I'm a Christian, and I believe in Jesus Christ, and I believe, that he is our Lord and Savior, I'm not going to exclude these basic natural laws to you, the Muslim, you, the Buddhist, you, the Hindu, whatever it is. They apply to you equally. I think they did that on purpose.
No, I would tend to agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I agree with you is because the facts bear you out.
Right.
I mean, if they meant it to apply to just to Christians,
They would have said it.
it would have said it. And I think people may think that we're belaboring this point, but I think it's really important because there's a segment out there that view the Constitution and they use it as a bludgeon against Christians, and they use the fact that they try to negate the Judeo-Christian worldview, which colored everything. So, and I think that's why it's important to have that conversation.
Well, and one other comment I want to make before you go on is you made the comment about, that our founding documents are racist. And, I've been over many times, and, it says, when you're talking about people think that it's racist. Not that you.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't say
you didn't. But I just want to just hit on it real quick that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. There's no asterisks in any of that. That doesn't says only white people, only black people, only Hispanic people. It don't say any of that. It says all men.
Right.
Easy.
And men in that case applies to humans, not just men.
Yeah, I know your wife, I've seen her wear my free man hat. Bethany wears the free man hat. Man means mankind.
Yes.
It don't mean male versus female.
And I gotta say, it's kind of a sad commentary that we actually have to delineate that, isn't it? It really is a sad commentary on where society is, that we have to delineate that fact. But that, that's
I went to
go
when
ahead.
I had the hats made, I went to B and I said, "Hey, you want me to put free woman on it?" She said, "No, it's not talking about that. It's talking about mankind."
Yep, absolutely.
So, I don't want to derail.
That's some great stuff, man. All right, so we're going to get into the very first principle, and I will put in the description on the video, I will put a link to just a basic rundown of the principles. Okay, so the first principle, let me pull up my notes. I've got notes here, so if I look down, it's not that I'm not paying attention. It's just I do not want to miss anything because this is a very important topic. And I, one of the reasons why I think it's really important now is if you look at what's going on in the world today, we've got people on the streets of our own country protesting to have their rights taken away and curtailed. Not taken away, but curtailed. We've got protests. If you look in Panama, those people down there are protesting to have the government intervene more in their lives. If you think back to the mid 2000s, whenever Greece was going through its austerity problems, those people were literally protesting to have the government take more control of their economic freedom. And that boggles my mind. Why would you do that? And so that's why these principles are important, because I guarantee you that sometime in the future, if the economy collapses like people say it's going to, there are going to be people in America out on the streets demanding that the government take more control. And that is the exact opposite of what needs to happen. And the only way you can combat that is by learning about what freedom is and putting it into practice. And that's what we're trying to do here. All right. So the first principle is the only reliable basis for sound government and just human relations is natural law. Tag, you want to go ahead and start the conversation on that?
Yeah, I'm going to read into this stuff different than a lot of people do because I'm just a weird guy. But I really think what this is talking about is that without morals, without law that's based in morals, that a sound government can't run. And, whether you're talking about, the eroding of the Constitution, that we're constantly being ruled by executive order, which is not law, right? It's really a suggestion. that are not founded in that. And then I would go a step further, the dissenters are quieted. Our divide in our country is really, to me, is a divide between, morals and law. And, which side of that fence, do you really stand on? Going back to like the Nazis or even the Romans, what happened to them is that their government got bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And their laws began to be separated away from those, morals. And so I think, just to kind of say it, to kind of sum this one up, I think that this is the one thing that religion does so well, and why it's so important in a society, is because it gives you that natural set of laws. And if you're not running by them, then you're running by corrupt, politicians who have no idea what really goes on out here, and have no idea, that they're completely out of touch. And so I would say natural law is absolute. Unfortunately, it's not followed anymore.
Yep. And I think you hit on the two important points of that principle. First, you talked about what sound government is, and I read that, and as I was researching and prepping for this, I went out and I was like, okay, what is sound government? And I went out, and everything I could find was that was pertinent to the conversation, I should say, all came back to the morals and ethics of the government. And
it is, yep.
And
that's correct.
It comes into topics such as, what government and politicians should tell the truth. They should be honest and open. Government should be faithful and fair. They should, when faithful and fair to the U.S. or America as a country, and more importantly to their constituents. And we don't see a lot of that these days. Another moral thing that they talk about is accountability. And politicians of the government should demand accountability amongst itself. And good Lord, try to find that today in Washington, D.C. or in your state government, and see how far that gets you. What was another one? Respect for the governed and respect for the government. Man, that one, there's a whole nother topic right there that we could spend hours on. If you think that our politicians respect us as a whole, then I got a bridge to sell you, seriously. Another one is humility, that the humility aspect of it all. And that entails understanding government officials and bureaucrats understanding that the role of government is limited, and we judge laws by their effect and not by their intentions. And that's a huge disconnect right now. I mean, look, we've got at least three Supreme Court justices that judge by intent and not effects. And that's why the latest Supreme Court rulings have been so up in the air and caused so much problems. Another one is the government should serve the people, not the government. And my point to that is, if you look at any governmental disaster plan, the very first topic on the list of what happens at a time of a disaster is continuity of government. Keeping the government running is the most important thing, not helping the people. So, and there's other things that I found, but those right there, I actually pulled those from an article that Joseph Lehman from the Mackinac Center wrote, called The 7 Principles of Sound Governance. And I read that and I was like, you know what, this guy's hitting it right on the head. That nail has been hit on the head. I found a really good quote, and it's attributed to James Madison, although there's some contention that it may have come from Thomas Jefferson, because it was in the Federalist paper number 51 from 1788, and they were talking back and forth. So there's some discussion about who actually said it. But the comment, or the quote is, "If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. And I think that sums up sound governance in a nutshell. I mean, it doesn't get more simpler than that. People that are in positions of power and in the bureaucracy have gotten way offline on that. They're way outside their lanes, and it's causing untold problems. And the second part of that you hit on was you started talking about natural law. And I'll be honest with you, Tag, man, I wasn't really quite sure what just human relations and natural law meant in that principle. So I actually had to go look it up, and I had to educate myself on it. And in the context of this principle, the author meant that just human relations was the moral and ethical interaction between people with other people and societal institutions, i.e. the government. All right. So they're saying that the government has to be responsible. And then the very next part of that is the people have to be responsible and moral and ethical. So it's not that they're just pointing the finger at the government. They're saying, okay, the government and the people have to be moral and ethical. And then they start talking about natural law. And do you know what the definition of natural law is? Because honestly, I've studied this in depth before, and I had no idea.
Yeah, I don't know what Webster says it is, but Webster
Okay, so,
also says that an assault rifle is a semi-automatic rifle. So
yeah, well,
I don't know.
I didn't get this from Webster. I actually got this from reading up on St. Aquinas and some of the Reformation people from medieval Europe. So the best definition I found is natural law holds that there are universal moral standards that are inherent in humankind throughout all time. And these standards should form the basis of a just society. Now, that actually, people may think that came from the founding fathers. That's not. That's that is actually classical Greek philosophy. That actually came from the time of Plato and Aristotle. So that's been around for thousands of years. And from a Judeo-Christian standpoint, if you look at the Bible, it's natural law is the point of how human beings participate in the eternal law of God. And that would be the rational plan which holds all creation together. So, and I think it's really important because, part of the conversation about the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution is there's a group of people out there that conflate natural law with what's called with codified laws, the laws of man versus the inherent moral values that people choose to follow. And I think it's really important to point it out that the Constitution, or I'm sorry, the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson specifically talks about the laws of nature and and nature's God. So he delineates that moral and ethical standard that we have to follow with being in line with God's eternal nature. And like we talked about earlier, I don't think that has anything to do with Christianity. I think that has to do with just man in general. And I think what you said earlier in the segment was absolutely spot on. So do you got anything else to add to that? I mean, we kind of ran through that.
Yeah. So you're right. So I think it's important to keep in mind that the founding fathers wrote these documents, and specifically in reference to natural law, through the eyes of a Christian. They wrote them for everybody, but they wrote them through the eyes of a Christian. So like, for example, I'm sure you and I can both agree that you don't take other people's things.
Oh,
would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Would you also agree that we don't lie about other people?
Oh, absolutely.
That we don't steal?
Mm-hmm.
That we don't commit adultery? That we don't kill? Okay, so there's 6 of the 10 commandments, but I'm going to bet you that every religious sect in the entire world, whether it's just whichever one, it contains those same kind of things.
Yep.
Right. So although it was written through the eyes, I think, of Christianity, what they were saying is your natural laws, the natural laws that are out there are, you know what, don't take from people. Don't bear false witness. Right. Don't covet your neighbor's wife. Right. Don't steal. Don't murder. I mean, it's this is, I think they make way more of this than it is. All natural law says is there are simple, basic principles that if we all lived by from a moral perspective, that then at that point in time, a government can succeed. And once a government loses that moral perspective of, you shall not covet your neighbor's goods, they're the biggest criminal that there is.
Yep.
Once we lose that moral tie to law is when a society begins to collapse. And it happened to us a long time ago, and we're way into it, and there is no stopping it, because the morals, that moral fiber, and you could go all the way back to, dads not being into homes, to, the abortion arguments, to, I mean, just so many of these things that go on in our world today, we've lost a lot of our moral fiber. And because of that, it's doomed. It cannot succeed if the law is not based in natural law. It cannot. We cannot be governed by executive order. It won't happen. It will fail.
Well, and I'll disagree with you a little bit on that.
Okay.
Because I think we need to differentiate between the United States government and America. So the Declaration of Independence applies to the nation of America, not the government of the United States. And I think no matter what happens throughout anything that's coming our way, the ideas that make up America and are the founding ideas of it will survive. And they will.
All right, G, let's talk about this. So
Okay.
what percentage of the population do you suppose are governed by natural law and morals?
You know what? I'm not even going to pretend to come close. I wouldn't even come close to that.
Dude, it's 2%, 3%, 5%. It's not a big number.
Well, that they did a survey and only 10% of professed Christians actually hold a Christian worldview. What's that say about the basis of our, the country was founded on Judeo-Christian ethos, and only 10% of the people that are supposed to believe in that actually believe in it? What's that say about our society?
Yeah. So how do you reconcile your statement you just made with your statement about the basic principles of America will continue?
I think
it's a crapshoot. What comes next?
I don't care if it's even one person. At the end of it all, as we come out of that dark tunnel, if it's only one person that holds these ideas in their heart, then it survives. That's my point. And we can't let those ideas be plowed under by the hubris of our society and the immorality of the people that are governing us. So I stand by my statement that the ideas that formed America will live on in some form, even if that person is in chains, forced onto their knees by an oppressor. As long as it's living in their heart, it will survive. That's my point.
Yeah. Well, gee, I pray that it does live on in some place other than a history book.
And I think it will. You talked about the universal truths, and I think because the founding fathers wrote these documents based on universal truths, they're gonna apply no matter what. All right, they're gonna apply in perpetuity. Boy, that's a hard word to say tonight. It's been a long day, man. But yeah, it's a, and maybe I'm optimistic. Maybe I'm overly optimistic. I don't know, but I think it's so profound that it's impossible for something like that to die. Pandora, as far as the tyrants are concerned, the Pandora box of freedom was let loose whenever they wrote these documents, and they unleashed them on the world. And the tyrants have been fighting it ever since, and they've been trying to quash it, and they've been trying to extinguish that light that it created. And they can't do it because they're wrong.
Yeah, well, I think there's just to validate your point a little bit. I think America's been free for a long time, and the populace you know, you'd like to think would not accept enslavement, except that's exactly what we've done.
Yeah.
You know, we currently live in the, you know, worst case of slavery, you know, I mean, in forever. And, you know, I mean, think about it, you know, you get up in the morning and you go to work and, you know, you work, you know, 60 hours a week so that you can do that for 50 years so that somebody can give you a gold watch and tell you to piss off, where you go on Social Security, where you paid in, you know, $500,000 over the course of your lifetime. So you die 4 years later and you didn't matter. I
Well,
mean,
Tag, we are running out of time. We're using Zoom, folks, and we've only got 40 minutes. So we're gonna have to wrap this up. Tag, great conversation. I'm sorry if I got a little wordy.
no, you're good, man.
This whole thing is really exciting to me. I find this totally fascinating, and I'm excited about doing this with you. And I'd like to bring some other people on down the road, have a third person and chat with us, so that we can get their person. I got some people that I know would add so much to the conversation.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm game for whatever.
I will reach out to people and we can see if we can make that happen. Folks, if you found this entertaining, go ahead and share it with somebody. If you find this interesting, go ahead and hit that notification buttons on either Tag's channel or my channel so that you know when the next one drops. And Tag, you got anything to plug right now? You got anything special going on?
Yeah, no, you know, we're just working hard at the farm, you know, trying to get a little bit freer, you know, every single day. And you know, it's not just freer, you know, physically, it's also freer mentally.
Right.
And, you know, we're working hard at it and we're doing it every single day. And when I hang up this call, you know, with you tonight, I'm going back out to, you know, get right back
Yeah,
at it.
I got it. I got
no,
it.
life's good. Hold the line.
It's hot and muggy and I really don't want to, but I got a bunch of stuff I need to do. So folks, until next time, y'all need to go out and pursue a life done free. Okay.
Amen.
Take care.